What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's the Man Welding, and today I want to talk about acceptance. So guys, let's go back quite a few years to when I was working for a job called Fit Fuel Nutrition, which the company eventually evolved into what is now Vail Food Company. Okay, so during this time I was living in Tallahassee, and this was an overnight job. So I started work at midnight and I worked until about 8 a.m. And what I did was essentially I cooked healthy meals in bulk and packaged them individually, and then at sunrise a team of delivery drivers would come and take those meals and distribute them to the customers so that the customers would have ready to eat meals throughout the day. And at that job, I worked with a couple of pretty unique individuals. And one of these guys, I don't really remember much about him, but he said something to me one night that really stuck with me, and I want to discuss that. So I don't recall the specific details around this particular night, but essentially I was upset about something. I was complaining, I was bitching, I was angry or whatever. And this guy, he was an older gentleman, he told me that I should go home and read the Serenity prayer. Now, I'm not a particularly religious individual, and at the time, I was unaware of what the Serenity prayer was. So it got my attention, and I went home that day and I looked up the Serenity prayer. So for those of you who don't know, the Serenity prayer is essentially, Lord, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I cannot accept, and the wisdom to understand the difference. And I found that to be a very powerful prayer. It resonates with me, and I think it is applicable to just about everybody. So why am I talking about the Serenity prayer? Well, guys, somebody very close to me passed away recently, and it was unexpected, and quite truthfully, it was avoidable. But nonetheless, it happened, right? And that person is no longer with us, and it's heartbreaking. You know, it's tragic, and it's hard to deal with, but the reality is that life goes on. And you know, that might seem kind of cold-hearted to say, but it is unequivocally the truth. Now, I lost my father a little over 2 years ago, and that was another extremely hard death for me to deal with, but there was nothing I can do, guys. And what I'm trying to get at is that in life, all of us at one point or another, and realistically at many points throughout our lives, are going to encounter these situations where people die, or where tragedy occurs, or where something very terrible happens, that in that moment it can feel like your life is over, or that you don't know how you're going to go on. And I just want this video to serve as a reminder that in those moments, it's okay to feel that way, but you have to understand that no matter what happens, the sun's gonna rise in the morning and life is gonna go on. And everybody grieves differently, and everybody experiences trauma differently, but regardless of what your timeline is in terms of grieving, you need to accept what has happened. You guys, acceptance is going to be the answer to dealing with these feelings and these situations. So let me relate that to another specific example I can give. It was quite a long time ago. I was working at my first welding job, and my girlfriend, who is now my wife, you know, at the time we had a dog, and she had this dog when we first started dating. And I never had a dog growing up as a kid. My family always had cats. So this dog's name was Lola. She was a Rottweiler. She was an absolutely amazing dog. For those of you who have ever been around Rottweilers, you know that they are just special dogs, right? And Lola was the first dog that I had in my life and that I had ownership of, and she was very special to me, and I had a very close bond with this dog. And anyways, to get to the point, one day, it was after work on a Friday. Like I said, I was working my first welding job, and I wanted to practice some welding on my front porch, but I needed some consumables from the welding supply store. So I took Lola with me, I put her in my car, and I drove over to the local welding supply. And at this time, my car, the air conditioning didn't work, and not only that, but my windows, the electronics that controlled the windows going up and down, were broken as well. So the AC didn't work and the windows did not roll down, which made for an incredibly hot cabin inside the vehicle. So when I got to the welding supply store, a couple of the people were outside. It was like towards the end of the day on a Friday, and I was like, hey, I got my dog with me. Is it okay if I bring her in with me? And they're like, yeah, it's cool. He said specifically to me, there's nothing in here that can hurt her. And I was like, all right, cool. So I brought her in with me, and we were in the warehouse, and she was just kind of walking around. I was keeping a loose eye on her, but she was a well-behaved dog, so I wasn't too worried about it, right? He had assured me nothing was going to happen. There was nothing there to harm her. So anyways, I grabbed what I needed, and I went inside to the showroom with my dog and essentially completed the transaction. And as I was leaving, I saw one of my coworkers was also there to get himself supplies for his personal use. So anyways, I said hi to him as I was leaving and he was entering. Well, me and Lola got in the car, and I drove home, and I met up with my buddy, and we started just practicing our welding on my front porch. And about 20 minutes later, that guy who I work with, who I had seen at the welding supply store, he came ripping into my neighborhood in his truck. And so I was on my front porch. I saw him coming in his truck, and it struck me as odd because I'm like, this guy doesn't even know where the fuck I live. So how is he here right now? Anyways, he pulls up in my driveway, and he's like, Steven, you need to take your dog to the animal hospital right now. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And he's like, well, after you left the welding supply store, the guy behind the counter realized that they had rat poison out on the floor, and that your dog ate the rat poison. And I just my heart dropped, right? So I stopped what I was doing. I grabbed Lola, I put her in my car, and I drove her to the nearest emergency vet clinic, right? I explained to them what happened, and this was all happening very fast. And my girlfriend was at work. I called her, and this was her dog originally, and she loved that dog. And I told her what was going on, and of course, she was very scared, having an understanding of the situation. And eventually, what happened was Lola ended up dying within a matter of a few hours. So not only was it extremely tragic, I felt betrayed, I felt completely responsible for what happened, and not only that, but the vet bills were, upwards of $4,000 or $5,000, and at the time I was making $11 an hour. I had no savings, and it completely bankrupted me, and it was just overall an extremely devastating situation, and it broke my heart, and it broke Megan's heart, and it just, it was a financial burden. It put a strain on my professional relationship with that. It was just, everything about it was just horrible, right? And the reason I tell that story is because oftentimes when something bad happens, people will tell you to find the silver lining in a situation. And yeah, I agree, that's good advice. But sometimes situations just suck, and there is no fucking silver lining. And in those situations, the only thing you can do is just accept what happened and move on. And that doesn't mean that you're not allowed to grieve. It doesn't mean that you're not allowed to be sad. It just means that you need to accept it for what it is, understand that there is no changing it. Hopefully you can learn from it, and as time goes on, your life will go on. So you guys, I'm gonna wrap the video up right there. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.